I confess, I'm frustrated, not with the Common Core math standards. I think those are fabulous. I do. I stand by my position in the fact in one of my prior video blogs, my vlogs, in which I talked about the 2 points about Common Core, being common, the commonality, and getting to the core, the rigor. And I I'm firm in believing that the Common Core standards for mathematics are really, really good for kids, period. Here's what I'm frustrated with. The lack of training that is happening with teachers. I can't tell you, and just going to, workshops and working with teachers and even online and discussion in forums, and the frustration is like, okay, here are the standards, and they're like, so you guys teach them, here's a book, hopefully this, helps you. But really, the Common Core math standards, especially the practices, are something that you can't really just look at a math book and develop those in your classroom. You can try, and you can hope that what you're using is having kids learn in a conceptual manner, using models that are developmentally appropriate and conceptual with the concept, and this is like on a daily basis that they should be doing these types of things, right? Justifying their reasoning, and I don't mean like, what steps did you do, and explain the steps. That's really not justifying your reasoning. It could be, but there needs to be training, because I've heard teachers say that, yep, I'm going to help with the Common Core, my students are going to keep a math journal, which is great. And then every now and then I give them a worksheet, and they're going to have to just explain how they solved it or what they did. That's not really reasoning with mathematics, which is the mathematical practice. When you reason abstractly, that's technically not it. And I've looked at models in elementary books where there's great models, break apart method, for adding numbers and really reinforcing place value. And then I've looked at, division and some examples on how they're presenting it. And I'm not saying I'm for one way or for the other, but the goal is to have a model that is conceptual, that students actually understand what's going on, and sometimes can use mental math strategies, like, adding tens together and rearranging numbers, using the commutative property and getting them used to that. That's all great. There are people, on Facebook and parents that are complaining, like, oh, this Common Core math, my kid's crying, they don't know what they're doing, and I believe that is true. I don't think parents are lying about their kids being frustrated. And the fact is, teachers are frustrated, and what is the common denominator is a lack of training. And who's responsible for that? Districts, federal government, because they're like, okay, basically you have to adopt these Common Core standards, or this is going to happen, this is going to happen. It's like, you're being threatened, basically. Even though they're great, and I'm all for the Common Core standards, I don't understand how we can go into this 3 years for most states that have adopted it, and teachers still continue to not be prepared to teach math using the conceptual models that the Common Core standards call for. And what happens when you put a child in that classroom? And there are fabulous elementary school math teachers and teachers alike. Teachers that are masters at their craft, teachers that have been teaching for years upon years and can break things down and explain, in layman's terms, and really understand even for the most, the weakest link in terms of struggling students, and that are great at what they do. But if you're not necessarily trained in something that's new, like the Common Core practices, the content standards are, content is content is content. But when you're talking about looking at a conceptual model for, division of fractions and, ratio tables and double number lines and all these bar models and things like that, well, thank God we have the internet, right? But it's still not the same kind of experience when you're just looking at a video and then hoping that you can go in and nail it, without the proper training. And really understanding why we have the practices and what they are. I actually heard one teacher say, well, Common Core math is really just to make sure that we teach many different ways to solve a problem, so that if Johnny likes it this way, he can do it this way, and if Sarah likes it this way, then she might catch on to this way. In a sense, that can be thought of as being true, but the different models are there because they are the conceptual ways to present the material. So in your mind, you're making these connections, it's conceptual, kids understand why things work, and that's the reason why there might be 2 or 3 different ways to show how to add, or how to, multiply, or divide, or subtract. I know some of you are like, well, no, they just need one way, and then they just learn that one way. But that one way is probably a traditional method of an algorithm or procedure. And we already know that that's not the best way to teach mathematics. If you studied math classes in college for methodology, for teaching mathematics, then you know the best way to teach mathematics is in a conceptual manner. It is to have kids use reasoning and critiquing the reasoning of others and justification, right? Using visual models and, dare I say it, discovering mathematical concepts on their own. I'm going to go a step further, on their own, because people think that kids don't have the ability to do that if it's scaffolded correctly and if it's guided in a way. Like what I do in math labs, it's guided in a way that the lab, it presented, it's so obvious what the pattern is because of the numbers that I used, right, and the models that are simplistic, so that kids can discover, maybe the easiest algorithm. And it could be just what, a unit rate is, or using division, but something where a visual model showing, so maybe 150 miles in 3 hours, and then them seeing, well, what is that 50 miles per hour, and going, oh, I could have just divided in the end 150 divided by 3. Because kids will always forget in the end, not always, but so many times, they'll forget the algorithm or procedure, but because they understand it conceptually, they can visualize that bar model, they're knowing, oh, that's 150 in 3 hours, so that's, if you divide that into 3 parts, that's 50. Because you've presented it in a way that's conceptual. That's all good for kids. So, I don't know, it's 2 in the morning. I confess it's late, and I digress. I confess I digress. These are my frustrations. These are my concerns. The whole testing thing, I'm still uneasy. If it were up to me, if I was in charge of the state, I'd say we're going to adopt the Common Core standards, but we are going to have a team create our assessment. But, then it's a totally different ballgame because it's money, right? It's funding. And then you go back to, well, are we going to do bubble? Are we going to do it online? We don't have the infrastructure to do that and create all that online. So that's the dilemma. So we all have to just go in, say a little prayer, and hope that the test is fair, right? And the proficiency scores are a true reflection of what students know and understand. And that the accountability component is fair to teachers. I'm still waiting to hear information on students with IEPs, students whose English is not their primary language, right? I haven't heard anything about accommodations, etc. So we'll see how it goes. I know it's only early September, and how about this whole 12-week window to test? That's 3 months. I don't get that. What are we going to start testing in February? So February, March, and April? I don't know. I won't be done with the Common Core curriculum in February. I'm going to be pushing it. I'm hoping to be done, end of April. That's kind of what I planned. So we'll see how things go. But I think I'm going to get off my soapbox and hit the sack. Good night.